Alrighty, so we have a quiz tomorrow on our standard algorithm for adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. So this review sheet should make sure we're prepared for that. Please remember the review sheet is actually at a difficulty level maybe a little bit higher, at least equivalent to the quiz. So if you feel confident about these coming in and you're getting these correct, you should feel good and perform well on the quiz. So let's get started with number 1. We have 1,769 divided by 29, making sure to put that 29 at the door, and 1,769 in the house. Dividing 29 into 1, it can't happen. So if you want to put a 0 there, you can. It's just a placeholder, just to make sure we have a number above each number in the dividend. So then we're going to look and see 29 will go into 17. It can't, so we can put a 0 there as well. So we're automatically starting trying to put 29 into 176. Please remember, guys, that when you're doing these larger numbers, it might be a good idea to do some of this multiplication facts with 29 over to the side to make sure that you're getting as close as possible. So when I look at this, one of the first number that jumps in my head is 5. So I'm going to come to the side and do 29 times 5 and see if that gets me close. So 5 times 9 is 45. Carry my 4. 5 times 2 is 10 plus the 4 is 14. So I got 145, which seems very close to 176, but I'm going to multiply it by 6 just to see if I can get any closer without going over. So 29 times 6. 6 times 9 is 54. Carrying my 5. 6 times 2 is 12. Plus that 5 gives me 17. So that does give me 174, which is closer. So 6 is going to be the better option here. So I'm going to do 6 on top. And then 6 times 29, well, I already have that written over here, is 174. When I subtract, 6 minus 4 gives me 2. The 7's go away. The 1's go away. We always want to double check. Is 2 smaller than 29? It is, so we're ready to bring down the 9. All right, 29 will go into 29 one time, making sure to write that on top of the 9. 1 times 29 gives me 29. When I subtract, I get 0. 0 is smaller. We're still checking. I know it seems silly, but that is part of that process. And then we're going to bring down. There's nothing to bring down. That's how you know you're done. Please remember, 0 does not mean we're done. If there is nothing to bring down, I am done. 0 is there at the bottom, so there is no remainder, so we can circle that 61. All right, let's look at the next one. So here we have 403 at the door, getting a little bit bigger here. 8,052 in the house. All right, so this one, I think some of us in class got a little freaked out by those big numbers. But remember, 403 is really close to 400, which is an easy number to picture in our head. So when I look here, obviously 403 can't go into 8. And 403 can't go into 80, so that's going to be another 0. But 403 can go into 805. Now remember, if I double 403, so if I multiply it by 2, that 3 would change into a 6. And the 4 would change to an 8. So that would give me 806, which is going to be a little bit too big. If we wanted to write that out over here to the side, just so that we can really visualize and see those numbers, 2 times 3, 6, 2 times 0, 0, 2 times 4 is 8. So that does give me 806, which is too big. So we can't use 2. We're going to have to do 1. So 1 times 403 is 403. So when I subtract that, 5 minus 3 is 2. We have 0, and 8 minus 4 is 4. And then let's bring down the 2. All right, now 4,000 is way bigger than 403. Please remember that when you're putting a number on top, it can only be a single digit. Since this is so much larger, I'm going to start with the biggest single digit there is, which is the number 9. So I'm going to try the number 9. Since I know I've got to jump way up there, let's try 9. 9 times 3 is 27. Carry the 2. 9 times 0 is 0 plus the 2. Gives me 2. And then 9 times 4 is 36. So that gives me 3,627. I know it seems like that's still far away, but remember, I can't put 10 on top. That's as big as I can go. And since it's not bigger than that number, we have to use 9. All right, now there is still a chance that maybe we made a mistake up at the top. So let's see what happens. 9 times 403, we do need to write our 3,627. And we can subtract. 2 minus 7 we can't do, so I'm going to borrow from this 2, making it a 1. And now that is 13. So 13 minus 7 is 6. 1 minus 2, I can't do that. So I'm going to go to the neighbor is 0. I can't borrow from 0, so it's easy to think of this as just 40 then. Let's borrow from the neighbor 40. When I borrow from 40, it becomes 39. And you can see it's kind of hard to squeeze this work in. If we wanted to go to the side to do the subtraction, we could. All right, and that 1 that I took from 40 is going to go with that 1, making 11. So now I have 11 minus 2, which is 9. 9 minus 6 is 3, and 3 minus 3 is nothing. All right, this is where checking is really important. Is 396? Why did I have a 3 there? I am so sorry, guys. Look, this should have been a 2. Look, see, even your math teacher makes mistakes. Goofy. I'm so sorry. I hope that didn't mess us up. This was obviously a 2. I don't know why I went and changed it to a 3. That's called silly error. We don't want to do that. Careless error is bad. So 12 minus 7, that should have been a 5 there. All right, so I'm sorry if that threw us off at home. Fixing that mistake. Me and my whiteout aren't getting along up here, which is why we use pencil. Okay, there we go. So I get 395. Now we are just going to double check. Is 395 smaller than 403? Yes. All right. Is there anything left to bring down? There's not, so I'm done. Guys, 395 is a really big remainder. All right, but remember, we were using a really big number. So I'm still going to put my fraction bar next to that 19. All right, my leftovers. Remember, if we have leftovers after dinner, we got to put them up. I'm going to have to take my leftovers in math and put them up on the top. 395, and then the bottom. Remember, our divisor is at the door, and it goes in the denominator. So 403 in the denominator. All right, please make sure we remember to keep that 19 with it. So it's 19, 395, 403 thousandths. Okay, let's look at the next one. All right, we have 2,350 times 44. All right, 4 times 0 is 0. 4 times 5 is 20. I'm going to carry the 2. 4 times 3 is 12. Plus 2 is 14. 4 times 2 is 8. Plus 1 is 9. All right, so we're done with this 4, so I'm going to X it out. And remember, whenever I put an X, I got to put an O as a placeholder. Also, remember, 4 is in the tens place, so before I can multiply, I need a placeholder in the ones. All right, so 4 times 0 is 0. We should end up with the same numbers here. 4 times 5 is 20. So I'm going to put my 0, carry my 2 again. 4 times 3 is 12, plus that 2 that I carried is 14. Carry that 1 again. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9. So we can see our numbers are the exact same except for the extra 0 on the bottom. Adding those up, 0, 0, 4, 4 and 9 is 13, carry the 1, and that gives me 10 there. So I get 103,400. Let's look at number 4. We have 4,584 times 183. Being careful to make sure that we can space out our place values to make sure everything lines up. The bigger the numbers, the more important it is for us to be very careful about lining up that place value. All right, let's get going. 3 times 4 is 12. Carry the 1. 3 times 8 is 24, plus the 1 is 25. Carry the 2. 3 times 5 is 15, plus the 2 is 17. Carry the 1. And 3 times 4 is 12, plus the 1 is 13. Guys, please make sure you're double checking me. Make sure I'm not making any careless errors again. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and mark these numbers out so I don't accidentally use them again. Mark out my 3 because I'm done with that, and I already put my 0 as a placeholder. All All right, so now we have 8 times 4, which is 32. I'm going to carry a 3 this time. 8 times 8 is 64, plus the 3 is 67. I'm carrying my 6. 8 times 5 is 40, plus the 6 is 46. Carry my 4. 8 times 4 is 32, plus 4 more is 36. Again, be really careful with that place value here. All right, so I'm done with those little numbers. I'm done with the 8. Since I have 2 X's, I need 2 O's as placeholders because 1 is in the hundreds place. All right, this one's an easy one to multiply. 1 times 4 is 4. 1 times 8 is 8. 1 times 5 is 5. And 1 times 4 is 4. So now we're ready to add it up. 2 plus the zeros is 2. 5, 2, and 0 is 7. 7 and 7 is 14. Plus 4 more gives me 18, and I'm going to carry that 1. I like to go ahead and add that 1 first so I don't forget about it. So 1 and 3 is 4, plus 6 is 10, and then plus that 8 gives me 18 again. And I'm going to carry that 1. Again, adding it first. 1 and 1 is 2, plus 6. 2 plus 6 is going to be 8, plus 5 gives me 13. Carry that 1, which gives me 1 plus 3 is 4, plus 4 more is 8. So as long as I did not make any silly mistakes, my answer is going to be 838,872. Guys, with these big numbers, even me as your math teacher, you've really got to be careful. And I'm telling myself that over and over again as well. So make sure we don't try to go too fast and rush through it on the review as well as on the test, guys. Take your time. Slow and steady wins the race, so to say. All right, number 5, 1,964 plus 299. 4 plus 9 is 13. I'm going to carry the 1. 1 plus 6 is 7, plus 9 is 16. Or we could have added the 1 to the 9 to make it 10, plus 6 is 16 still. All right, 1 and 9 is 10, plus 2 is 12. Carry the 1, and then 1 and 1 is 2. So I get 2,263. All right, 3,052 minus 794. All right, subtracting. Yay, we get to borrow because I can't do 2 minus 4. So I'm going to borrow from 5, which makes it a 4. And that 1 that I'm taking away is going to the 2 to make it 12. 12 minus 4 should give me 8. 4 minus 9, I can't do that, so I'm going to borrow again. When I go to my neighbor, though, this time it's a 0. I can't take anything away from 0. So we've been talking about the trick where I can, instead of looking at that as 0 and then 3, I can look at that as a 30. If I take 1 away from 30, so if I mark that whole thing out and take 1 away from 30, it gives me 29. The 1 that I took from 30, I'm going to put in front of the 4 to make 14. All right, 14 minus 9 is going to be 5. 9 minus 7 is going to be 2, and then we have a 2 with nothing to subtract. So I get 2,258. All right, again, remember, you can use this technique if you would rather borrow from the 3 and pass it to the 0 to make 10, then borrow from 10 to pass it to the 4, you can. That was just a simpler technique that we have mentioned early in the week. All right, let's look at some word problems. All right, so it says Sally decided to sell all of her old books. She gathered up 93 books to sell. She sold 37 books in a yard sale. How many books does Sandy have now? I'm sorry, I think I was reading that wrong. So Sandy, again, remember it said she had 93 books. If she sold 37, that means we're subtracting that. Borrowing from the 9 to make that 13 minus 7, which gives me 6. And 8 minus 3 is 5. All right, so that means she has 56 books. I am going to go ahead, spoiler alert here, on the test. It is going to specify in those directions to write a complete sentence for your answer. So let's practice that right now. Making sure we check again to answer the question completely. It's asking how many books does Sandy have now? So that 56 should answer that. So we have Sandy has 56 books, and if you wanted to include that is after the yard sale, that also specifies the time in the problem that we're talking about. After the yard sale. All right, so Sandy has 56 books after the yard sale. All right, you can see clearly where my answer is, and then I did write that out as a complete sentence. Ignore my S that looks like a 5. All right, let's look at number 9. Miss Donahue has 105 boxes of tissue. How many boxes did each student bring in if she has 29 students? Whew. All right, so since we're taking those tissues and we're splitting up the boxes to find out how many each individual student brought, if we're splitting something up, that is going to be division. So I have 29 divided into 105. All right, so 29 won't go into 1, 29 won't go into 10. So I am looking at putting that into 105 all at one time. I have noticed today that a lot of people, when they first saw this, they saw 5, so they tried 5. Guys, I would encourage you, like when it's some larger numbers like this, multiply it over to the side before writing it in the problem and having to erase and do a lot of changing. So here we have 5 times 9 is 45. Carry my 4. 5 times 2 is 10 plus the 4 is 14. So 145 we can see is much larger than 105. So I know I'm going to have to drop down. Since it is so much larger, instead of just dropping down 1, I would probably try to drop down 2 to try 3 next. All right, so 3 times 9 is 27, carrying my 2. 3 times 2 is 6, plus the 2 is 8. So that gives me 87 there. All right, we can see that 105 lays somewhere in between. If you wanted to try 4, let's go ahead and do it. Why not? 29 times 4. The more we practice, we multiply these big numbers, the more we're actually practicing our multiplication facts. So 4 times 9 is 36. Carry my 3. 4 times 2 is 8. Plus the 3 gives me 11. So there we can see it jumps over 105. 3 was our best choice. So 3. 3 times 29 was 87. When I subtract, I am going to have to borrow. So I'm going to borrow from 10, making that a 9, and my 5 a 15. So 15 minus 7 is going to be 8. 9 minus 8 is 1. So I have 18, and what this shows me is 18 is smaller than 29. Again, just double checking, making sure 3 was our best choice. As we found out this week, that when we do word problems, that doesn't necessarily mean I want to write my remainder as a fraction. We want to make sure we go back and look and read and see what the question was actually asking us. So it wants to know how many boxes did each student bring if she has 29 students. So we saw 29 goes into 105 completely 3 times. All right, since a student isn't going to bring in a piece of a box, I am just worried about the whole number for right now. So to answer that question, incomplete sentence, please. It's going to be each student needs to bring in Now here's where we kind of want to make sure that we are being careful about our wording, because there was something left over. So if each student brings in 3 boxes, we're not actually going to get to 105 because we still have these 18 left over. So that means some students brought in more than 3. So when I write this, I'm going to say each student needs to bring in at least, because some of them are going to bring in more than 3 boxes for us to get up to the 105 to make up for this 18 that was left over. So we're going to say each student needs to bring at least 3 boxes of tissue. All right, and there's our answer clearly written in our sentence. All right, and our sentence is specific, and it also refers to that remainder. If you wanted to get even more specific, you could say each student brings in 3 boxes of tissue, and 18 of those students brought in an extra box. So that also encompasses that remainder that we see. All right. Whew. All right, here we go. Sally earns $12.50 an hour cleaning houses, but doesn't work on Saturday or Sunday. If she works from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., how much money will she make in a week? So the first thing I want to make sure that we realize is this week, normally when we see a week, we think 7 days. but this does specify we're not including Saturday or Sunday. So let's make sure we remember this week is only going to be 5 days. All right, next thing I want to do is I want to know how many hours in that day she is working. So we have from 8 to 2. So I know from 8 to 12 is 4 hours, and then 12 to 2, that gives me 2 more. So that's going to give me 6 hours that she is working, making $12.50 an hour. All right, so now we've got to make sure that we can find our answer. So you can do this a couple of different ways. If you wanted to find out how many hours in the week she works, you could multiply our 6 hours times 5 days. I'm actually going to multiply here first. I'm going to find out how much money she makes in that one day where she's working 6 hours, because that keeps my numbers smaller. Also, now we haven't talked about how to multiply decimals. All right, but with $12.50, I feel like we probably could reason our way through this. So we could add it up, or if you wanted to, we can multiply. I'll kind of walk you through those steps for if we wanted to multiply that decimal. So $12.50 times 6. Multiplying that, I would multiply the same way. So 6 times 0 is 0. 6 times 5 is 30. Carry my 3. 6 times 2 is 12 plus 3 is 15. Carry the 1. And then 6 times 1 is 6. Plus the 1 is 7. All right? There were 2 decimal values, 2 numbers after the decimal in my problem. So it actually, in my answer, I would move the decimal 2 places to make sure there are 2 numbers behind it, even if they are 0. So I do get $75 here. Another way we could do that, if I pair these off by 2s, so $12.50 plus $12.50, I know that's $25. So that means in the first 2 hours she makes $25. In the next 2 hours, so that put me at 4 hours, that's another $25, so that's $50. And then in the last 2 hours to get to 6 hours, that would be $25 more, which would give me $75. So you could actually reason your way through that just by doubling that $12.50 if you were uncomfortable with the decimal. All right, I am going to go ahead and tell you on the quiz, guys, we haven't multiplied decimals. I just thought this was a good kind of challenge problem to get us thinking. All right, so now I know that it's $75 that she makes in an hour. If I want to know how much she makes in the week, I need to take that $75 and multiply it times 5 since she's working 5 days. So 5 times 5 is 25, carry the 2. 5 times 7 is 35, plus the 2 is 37. So that gives us $375. And I'm going to make sure I write that out in a complete sentence. All right, so Sally earns $375 in 1 week. All right, and I make sure that I specifying the time frame to which she's earning that money. All right, guys, please remember, in addition to this quiz tomorrow, we also have our multiplication facts. Make sure that you're practicing those. Spend a little bit of extra time tonight quizzing yourself. And I hope you'll have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.